Aria, let's see what you sent us today. Problems with pollution. What are the reasons? How can they be solved? Let's see what you said. Cities around the world increasingly are becoming polluted, and governments are constantly looking for ways to resolve this issue. Nowadays, complications caused by polluted air have been exacerbated, notably in large metropolises, lowercase n. In this essay, we'll discuss what has brought about this phenomenon and what are the possible solutions. Okay, and what the possible solutions are. You have to use the correct sentence form here. I personally believe to address this issue, we need to rethink our city planning, get rid of the S, particularly transportation. Okay, get rid of the. Public and private transportation together are the main causes for the air pollution we are experiencing. This is because there are millions of cars driven in our streets every day. Okay, check this out. The vast majority of which, so when you have a relative clause, okay, starting with which, and then you've got majority of, you have to switch this around, and then it has to be the vast majority of, and this takes the place of them. So the vast majority of which run on natural fuels. The solution lies in better city planning, which we can achieve by introducing more efficient public transport, which runs on electricity on one hand, and adopting electric cars on the other hand. All right, careful with this on the one hand and on the other hand. You know, I know that in a lot of languages we do this, we use an expression like this. I know in another language that I speak, we do exactly the same thing. But in English, it doesn't really work. On the one hand and on the other hand, have very, very specific uses. So try to avoid this here, okay? Okay, let's see. Moreover, we can replace intercity. Okay, intercity flights apart less than a certain distance. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Moreover, we can replace intercity flights of less than a certain distance with fast trains while equipping not cruising, I think you mean cruise and cargo ships. I think this is what you mean, with solar panels. Okay. How would that help? Can you explain it to us? So how would the solar panels help? It might seem really obvious, but it's always a good idea when you present a solution. It's always a good idea to explain why it's a solution. Okay, because otherwise it's just not very well supported. Let's continue. Manufacturing also generates a great level of pollution as the bulk of production plants are in the vicinity of cities, and in turn they are affected by the fumes discarded from these facilities. However, as we are accustomed to consumerism, we are unable to stop these activities. Hence, targeting manufacturing would not be a suitable way to address this issue. Nevertheless, any improvements in respect to reduction in the level of smog disposed by factory units should be researched. Full stop here. I want to talk about this paragraph in a little more detail, but let's read your conclusion. To conclude, despite the great impact manufacturing has on air pollution, owing to our obsession with consumerism, we are unable to change these activities significantly. Thus, we have to target our future city planning, no S, transportation in particular to reduce pollution in our cities. Okay, so I thought this was a little strange. Let me tell you why. Because the whole essay is about the reasons for this and how they can be solved. So here you decided to have a paragraph where you talked about the causes for pollution, okay, with regard to transport, and then you came up with some solutions. But then you had this whole paragraph about the problem of manufacturing, and then you were just kind of like, oh, well, we can't do anything about it. And so I didn't think that was a good idea, okay? If you can't find a solution for it, then don't talk about it. Find something else that you can find a solution for. You know, maybe it's not manufacturing. Maybe you make something up. Maybe you think that there are too many people in our cities, and maybe that, the governments need to take measures to have people move outside of the cities. So anything. But if it asks you what are the problems and how can they be solved, it is not enough to say, oh, well, we're consumeristic, so we can't do anything. You have to come up with a solution, even if it's make believe, even if it's something that is so idealistic it would never happen. I mean, maybe you could have said that, these factories can use solar power, or maybe they can take advantage of other renewable sources of energy like wind power or hydropower, something. Okay. But I didn't really like that you did this. You really needed to come up with a solution. Okay. All right. So that's it for your task. Hmm, 2. Let's go to your task 1 now, but the car sales. Remember, please, I really need the image. It's important to me so that I can refer to it when I'm correcting your task 1. So make sure that you include it. All right. The given graph illustrates the sales of 3 different car brands. Okay, and you name them in 9 European countries. Okay, in the year 2018. Overall, Ford had the highest sales compared to its counterparts. Audi came second, while BMW had the least sales compared to the other 2 brands. The top sale of any brand in any country was Ford in Hungary, whereas the lowest sale of all was BMWs in Belgium. Okay, so the first thing that I understand here is that you've misunderstood the chart, which is why it's so important to include it in your image. This is the image you had. I pulled it up, so let's talk about it a little bit. Let me just make it a little bigger. I can. Let me see. Oh, well, maybe I can't. All right. So, it's a stacked bar chart. So what does that mean? It means that what you're concerned with here really is these top numbers. So what they're telling you, let's take, for example, Hungary. The number of cars sold in Hungary was close to 400,000. So that's the total. And then the colors inside show you what made up that total. So that means you've got about 100 and I don't know, about 120, 130,000 BMWs. You've got about 130,000 Audis, and you've got about 130,000 Fords. So you can say that the sales of the 3 car companies in Hungary were equal, coming up to close to 400,000. Do you understand? So essentially what you've got here is not 27 pieces of information, right? Because it's 9 countries. Yes. You don't have 27 pieces of information, meaning 9 times 3. You actually have 36, because we're also very concerned about these totals. So yes, Hungary, Belgium had the lowest. Okay, so do you understand? We're concerned about those totals. And then as a secondary point, we're concerned about what made up that total. All right, so we're very interested in the fact that Ford made up almost all of the sales of cars in Belgium, whereas the other 2 had a negligible amount. Okay? So that's the kind of thing you need to talk about. I hope that made sense. Let's see what you wrote. Right. So because you misunderstood this this diagram, you misunderstood it. Obviously, it's not going to do very well in task achievement. You've misread it, and so I want you to understand how to read stacked bar charts. But let's look at it in terms of grammar, in terms of everything else, to see what you wrote. It's a little long, so that concerns me. Remember, I know I said that there's 36 pieces of information, but you're really not supposed to cover them all. We'll talk about how you can do it. Starting with the top seller after Ford's outstanding success in Hungary with just below 400,000 units sold, came France with slightly above 300,000 units and Germany with just above 250,000 units. Sales in Ireland and Holland were also robust, with about 250,000 units in each country. Poland, UK, and Italy took 6th, 7th, and 8th place respectively, while Belgium experienced the least sales with just under 100,000 units. Okay, great. So good, you did that. I'm very happy to see that, because I have to look at it, of course, but Yeah, I mean, it looks like you covered the totals here for the 9 countries, so that's fine. I'm not really crazy about this sixth, seventh, and eighth place. We're not talking about places, so it's much more meaningful if you actually give us some figures. If they're not particularly important, then you can give a range there. Which countries are you talking about? You're talking about Poland, UK, and Italy. So for Poland, UK, and Italy, you could say that the three of them ranged between 120,000 and 210,000. So something like that would be fine. You don't have to be super specific, but this isn't particularly meaningful here, okay? All right, so Audi had a relatively distinct sales record varying across the region. Hungary was also Audi's top sales market, selling just above 250,000 units. Germany came in second with an insignificant margin. What are you saying about Germany? Okay, I don't understand that. I mean, Germany had well over 100,000 Audis. All right, okay. Um, Sales in France were also considerable, with slightly higher than 200,000, don't forget, sold while relatively mediocre, get rid of the A, while relatively mediocre sales were experienced in Ireland, Poland, and Holland, a humble performance in Italy and UK, while Belgium witnessed the company's lowest demand. Yeah, you already, if it's lowest, then you don't need to use this comparative here than any other market. So you could have said lower demand than any other market or the lowest demand, full stop. All right, I'm a little confused here. Um, Let me see what you said about BMW, and then maybe it'll become clear to me. All right, last but not least, BMW showing rather balanced sales across the region with what? Let me try it again. Last but not least was BMW, showing rather balanced sales across the region, with Hungary, Germany, and France together comprising BMW's most successful markets. As the automaker sold more than 100,000 units in each market. The second tier belonged to Ireland, UK, and Italy, with an average of just below 100,000, while Holland and Poland followed them closely. Unsurprisingly, BMW made the least sales. Okay. So I'm confused now. I'm not really understanding. Did you understand how to read this, or you didn't? Like I said, it's very helpful if I have the image right next to this so that I can refer to it. Um, Clearly it's too long, and uh you went into a lot of detail when you needed to. It's not even you went into a lot of detail. You wrote a lot of language, okay? Like you covered in every single car company, you covered every single country. You don't need to do that, all right? Like I said, 36 pieces of information here. And I really felt like you said something about pretty much every one of them, but you don't want to do that. Task one is as much about what you don't write as it is about what you do write. And so what they're checking here is to see that you have selected the right information. So, um, something that I find really, really helpful in tasks like this, when you've got a ton of information, is using ranges or using, I like to call them umbrellas. So, in other words, um, let's see, how can I explain this? So, say for example, you want to talk about BMW. One thing I would say about BMW is, no, actually, I'm not going to talk about that. Let me talk about something else. Here we go. When we talk about the totals, okay. So I would have said that you've got this figure for Hungary around 400,000. You've got this figure for France around this. And I would say, in contrast, Belgium and Italy. And then I would say the remaining countries, and I would name them, all had sales between 200 and 300,000 cars. So that's a range. They had between 200 and 300. Or you could say the sales for the other countries and name them ranged between 200 and 300,000 cars. So this way we have a general ballpark, but we're not dragging down our reader with too many insignificant details. All right. Typically, in a task like this, the outliers are what you're interested in. So these four, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the rest just kind of smush them together like that. And then I would probably do something similar for the car companies. So for Italy, what did I say Italy for? For BMW, I would say that all the countries sold approximately 100,000, with the only exception being Belgium at a negligible amount. Okay. I would say that Ford sold the most cars in Hungary and Holland with whatever that number is. It looks like it's around 130,000. Okay. I would probably say that it sold the least in Germany and Italy. And I would give you that number. It looks like it's around 20, maybe 30,000. And then again, I would smush the rest of the companies together, saying that in the remaining countries, it sold between 60,000 and 100,000. All right, roughly. So that's the way you want to do this. This way you don't have too many details. So I hope that helps, Aria. I hope that gives you an idea, because first of all, with such a long task one, I have to ask if you were able to complete these both in an hour. It's very difficult. But again, IELTS is about editing and selecting the right information. So I hope that helps you understand what to include and what not to include. All right. So good job, and let's see more work. I'll be looking forward to it. Good luck.